I had to make a second video today. After I closed the first one, I got like, maybe I should make one. Which one I think is the worst sounding Cerwin-Vega speaker? We're not talking hi-fi. And which one is the best? I think you guys know where I'm going with this one. Let's start with the worst sounding one that I think is the worst sounding one, okay? There's two speakers that are competing with that for that title. But ultimately, you know, one has to lose, and it's very close. The two speakers that are competing for the worst sounding, I'm not saying the worst made, but the worst sounding, is the HP215. And here's the reason why that one is nominated for the worst sounding. It is a party speaker. That's the true freaking party speaker. You can't call it anything else. Even Cerwin-Vega themselves called it a party speaker. That's why it's called HP, House Party. That's what it stands for. It is a screamer of other dimensions. It is so sharp. It is so high pitched and so just straight in your face. And if you sit down and try and listen to something on low volume, I mean, you don't get much out of it. And it is like, it's not balanced. It doesn't do anything for me except for it's a cool product if you want to play loud. But why would you buy that one when you can go and buy freaking Pro Audio Dual 15s, you know? So that product never made sense to me. It was almost like they just wanted to put something out there and see how it sold and let's do something fun. I don't think there was much thought behind that speaker. It is as bad as you can get, you know. I mean, it's a cool product. That's the only thing about it. The sound quality is like at best like styrofoam on window. Um, so that's pretty darn bad. And the second one that I have nominated is the E series and the E315. It is. I mean, it's. Let me put it like this: the E315 is better sounding than the HP 215, but the E315 is a terrible speaker when you compare it to the other Cerwin-Vega models. So when you compare the E315 to, let's say, E715, the AL1000 or 1002, AT15, VS150, RE38, and so on and so on, and DNI and DX9 and blah blah blah. When you compare the E315 to all the other speakers that are in the same range, then you see how poor the sound quality is in it. But it's better than the HP215. So those two are the worst ones, and out of those two, yeah, the HP 215 doesn't stand much chance. So I probably say, if we're talking about, we're not talking about coolness factor or collector factor or how rare they are, blah blah blah, all that. We're talking just about sound reproduction and how good the sound reproduction is. And those two are pretty darn bad, and the HP 215 is the worst. Yeah, we managed to award something to the HP 215. I still can't get, after 40 years in with Cerwin-Vega, I can't understand why they let that product out in the market. There was no rhyme or reason for that. It was like a, just let's do it. I don't get it. I don't get that product. I've had the Pier and I didn't enjoy it much. I sold it fairly quickly. I might get one pair if I can get my hands on it, just to have them, you know, just for the collectible thing. But they are not something I actively go out and seek. So two bad speakers now catapults us towards the other end of the scale, the best sounding speaker of Cerwin-Vega. And I have to do the same here. I have to kind of like nominate two contenders. And that is so hard because I have to exclude Um, some of the, how can I put this? I have to exclude some models because they're not just available to the masses. We have like SR1 and SR2, that kind of speaker thing there. I just have to exclude that one. Um, because it's not something you can get your hand on. At least the other one you can get your hand on if you look long enough. And I know a few people who have them. So we're gonna, of course, one nomination is the Vega 500. That's one contender. Gotta be. And you know where this is gonna end up. But we have to find a contender that can compete against it. Who can compete against the Vega 500? Beside its little sister or little brother Vega 400. Well, we have to also exclude the Sufet. So now we're talking about which one do we really look into. And from the ones I have heard, it probably have to be the 432R. I have heard it once. I've heard it once many years ago. It's hard to recap though, but I know I had a positive experience. I was like, damn, this is good. So I'm thinking if there is another model that could take up the well, let's nominate three. Let's do that. So the 432R is one. The Vega 500 is the second one, and let's nominate one more. From what I can remember, that I think most people will go like, "Ooh, this sounds really good." Um, yeah, not easy. Nah, we can stay with those two. We can stay with those two. Because the other ones doesn't even come close, so it wouldn't be fair. They don't come close. Um, so let's look at the positive things with both of them. The 432R is a very special speaker. It's kind of like, in a way, it has some of the Vega 500 mentality in it. And it has the same grandiose sound. It is very good. Once you hear it, you will go like, "Ooh, that is so good." And there's people in this Facebook group that has them, and I know a couple of people who have had them. They don't have them anymore, but they have had them, and that's how I heard it. Um, and from what I remember, I heard them once over a whole day, and we were playing a lot of different music, everything from Dire Straits, Pink Floyd, Metallica, Genesis, um, Jennifer Rush, and the Celine Dion, stuff like that. We tested a lot of music on it, and it's over the spread over. Didn't matter if it was pop, metal, or rock, or even blues because we played some Gary Moore. It was really good on all genres of music. It was like I couldn't really say that it fit one genre of music better than the other. Maybe where it was most unhappy was with the metal, um, but not because it didn't have the energy and the punch and all that stuff, but I felt like the clarity and the details really shined when you did music like Celine Dion, um, Dire Straits, Pink Floyd, where there's a lot of guitars and there's a lot of subtle differences. Really good speaker. If I can uh, endorse it, I would, and if I could have 20 pairs, I would buy them because they're so good. And it's maybe the second biggest, most positive experience I have had with Cerwin-Vega speaker was when I heard that one. And the speakers that I heard was 100% original. They had not been done anything with. And they were almost in mint condition because those speakers belonged to his dad, and he got them from his dad. And his dad was a dealer in Ohio, I think, or yeah, I think it was in Cleveland, Ohio, back in the day, way back. So he got him new. So they had been in the family for a long time, and it is a masterpiece of a speaker. Um, really good. I would say probably maybe the second best speaker Cerwin-Vega has made, sound wise. But how does it stack up with the big boy, the Vega 500? And I have for years, if not decades, as long as I can remember, since I heard those speakers. I heard them many times in Denmark. There was a couple of people over there that had them, and there was a guy in North Germany in Lübeck who also had a pair. And so I've heard them many times, and I can only say, wow. If there is one speaker, I have not had that kind of a positive experience from a speaker ever. And I have heard JBL Everests, I have heard JBL Paragon, Metrogon, whatever you call them. I've heard all these so-called iconic JBL speakers. I've heard a lot of the Jensen speakers. I've heard a lot of the Tannoy speakers. I think Tannoy had a speaker called Westminster something that was supposed to be like really freaking good. And these Cerwin-Vegas, the Vega 500, let me just say one thing. The Vega 500 corner horn sounds better than the Klipsch corner horn. I've heard them both side by side. The Vega 500 sounds better than the Klipsch corner horn. And they were both driven by Krell amplifiers. And they had, what CD player was it hooked up to? It was not Cambridge. It was another one. I can't remember now. But it was Krell amplifiers that was hooked up to the one pair of the Vega 500, and that was where he had the Klipsch corner horns too. So we kind of like swapped back and forth. Yeah, no doubt, the Vega corner horns sounded way better, way more detailed, way more detailed and crisp and dynamic. Better bass, more complete. The other time I have heard the Vega 500s was when it was run by one was Pass Labs amplifiers. I've heard them with Parasound amplifiers. I've heard them with Elektrokompaniet and AW250 amplifiers. One time I heard, because one guy came over, this was the guy down in Lübeck, we had a listening party, and the one guy that came over there brought with him Elektrokompaniet and Nemo monoblock amplifiers, and we were running stereo sound and had two Vega 500s, and I became religious. It was so good. If I can get my hand on two Nemo Elektrokompaniet Nemo amplifiers and a pair of Vega 500s, I will sell every other speakers I have in storage now. And that's a bunch. That's a lot of Cerwin-Vegas in that storage that I'll just get rid of. But I couldn't, because I'm trying to make this museum. But you get my drift. If I could swap out everything I have now, oh my lordy. You know what? There's no battle here. The Vega 500 is the best sounding Cerwin-Vega speaker ever made, and I don't care what amplifier. Well, here's the thing though. They are demanding. They need good amps. You can't hook up 100 watt or 150 watt to that Vega 500 and expect it to sound really good, because it is a 4-way speaker with an 18-inch woofer, and it has a mid woofer, and it has a mid-range horn, and it has a tweeter horn, and I don't care if it's very easy to draw. It has like a sensitivity of like 115 or 116 or 18 or 125 or something. It's way up there in sensitivity. I have to look it up. I have it in brochure. But if you use a good amplifier, let's say 250 watts and up, and you use a good brand that is recognized for quality, both, reliability and build quality and sound quality. Parasounds. I always loved the old Parasound amplifiers. You can use Parasound, you can use Krell, you can use Mondial, Aragon, Electrocompagnia, Hegel, Pass Labs, PS Audio, you name it. If you get one of these good hi-fi monster amplifiers and you hook them up to a Vega 500 a pair, I'll tell you, that's as close as you can have an orgasm without having sex. It is so good. It sounds so good. I wish every one of you, because it's so hard for me to sit here and try and explain to you guys how good it really sounds. If there's one thing I wish everyone out in Cerwin-Vega land, at least once in their life, could have the chance of listening to. Just sit down and lean back, choose your whatever music you like, take your 10 best CDs that you have ever listened to, your 10 best favorite CDs, and just sit there for a whole freaking day and enjoy. Because it is such an experience. Such an experience. Of course, the places I went to was way out of normality, because they had done acoustical works to their listening area. There was they had thought of everything. There was acoustical damping, there was traps, there was all kinds of stuff. And these guys are audiophiles, and it's not like they just had one pair of Cerwin-Vega 500. They had a bunch of stuff. One guy had monolith speakers. I mean, they are $100,000, $200,000, $1 million a pair. So, these guys are serious dudes when it comes to sound quality. And they were rocking the Vega 500, and they said it hey, this is up there. This is up there with the best 10 speakers in the world ever. And when those guys say it, rest in peace to Albert. He's now no longer with us, but he had his hi-fi setup in Aalborg, Aalborg, Denmark, was $1 million. I'm not kidding you. He had amps. He had electricians out to make a sub panel just for his freaking audio. There was he had thought about everything, and he had so much stuff. And I mean, it was he had built an addition onto his house. Here's how they had done. His house was separated, but it was an addition, so you had to walk through a hallway to get into it. It was concrete on the outside, wood on the inside. Each freaking wall was a foot and a half, 12, 18 inches thick, and it was sound dampened to dampen the sound from outside. There was no windows. The roof was 2 feet thick. It had acoustical foams between the wood and the concrete. He had done it all. This was I think it was 1,500 to 1,700 square feet of area. Then he had another addition on the back there that was at least the same amount, where he stored everything. It was full of audio gear, top freaking notch audio gear. So when he wanted to change something, he had to go through this hallway, go in there, pick out what he wanted, come back and set it up. And he had a binder. He had made a binder where he was okay, this amp and this pair of speakers needs to be placed like this in this room. So he had spots, dedicated spots in the room where the speakers had to go. And he had to look it up in as a binder to say, okay, now I'm going to use this type of speakers, speaker A. They're going to be placed like that, right there. So many centimeters or so many meters from the wall. It was a freaking science project. But it was so cool. And he said 40%, 50% of the time, he just rocked the Cerwin-Vegas. That's what he used beside his other speakers that he had. He switched it back and forth. That was the extreme case. The other one in Denmark, he had 3 or 4 different pairs, and he was in a normal home where he had at least done some acoustical things, but it wasn't to the extremes. So I kind of like listened to them in different environments. And then, of course, the dude in Lübeck was kind of like in the middle ground there. He had dedicated audio rooms that he was having in his house. One was a movie room and one was a music room. So it wasn't like in a living room kind of setting. So I've heard these Vega 500s in many different applications and in many different listening locations. I tell you, best freaking speaker ever made from Cerwin-Vega. Can't find anything else that sounds as good. I hope go out and look for them. They can be found. They can be found, but they're extremely hard to find. I've been looking for 25 years and I haven't found a pair yet that I can buy. Not even close to me. I found a pair online and he was not willing to ship them. I found 2 pairs online. One was in California and one was up in Idaho. And of course, none of them wanted to ship. And if there was going to ship, it's going to be like a $5,000 shipping cost because they're so freaking huge. I couldn't afford it at the time. So, there you go. The worst and the best. Take your pick. What you want.